of 68 After Dark. Post-Champions Classic edition, as you can see. We are one of a very few number of people who are still in the building past almost 1 a.m. Eastern time following the double overtime thriller that was Michigan State Gonzaga, and then into the grind of a game that was Duke and Kansas. I am Greg Waddell, Randolph Childress, Rob Doster, and Megan McKeon. It's great to see you all. Thanks for staying up with us if you are here. Let's jump right in. Let's go into Duke and Kansas first. As I mentioned, bit of an ugly game. RC, you and I were talking before this. We don't know if we did learn much about either of these teams. You could kind of flip it either way. There's still more we want to see from them, or it can confirm whatever your biases were going into the game. What's your biggest takeaway from the result of this Kansas victory?
Their championship pedigree closed the game for them. But if I'm Duke, I'm not optimistic. I'm not concerned about anything. I think each freshman had its moments. We questioned what we were going to get out of Jeremy Roach. Was he going to lead this group? Well, if Jeremy Roach isn't in there in the first half, Duke's blown out by 20 in the first half, and this game's over. So Filipowski showed up, gave us something. Like I said, every guy had a moment. They lost to a championship team. No reason to put your head down. Again, I think it's on to the next for Duke.
This Duke team, to me, looks like a lot of really talented pieces
Right.
that don't have enough chemistry just yet.
Right.
Still trying to learn how to play with each other. Roach is the glue that's going to keep them
Right.
together. Like you mentioned, there were freshmen that had times that were really good. Filipowski celebrated a little too much for me. I was kind of like, at times, act like you've been there. I'm like, well, you just made a layup. Like, why are we getting so jacked up about it? Come on, cuz.
He had a grown man dunk.
He did it too many times. At one point, it's like, come
You
on,
gotta
let's
let it-
move
you
on
gotta
to the
let him
next
live.
play.
You got to let him live.
I don't know about that one.
I'll tell you this, though. My biggest takeaway from this Duke game is it reinforced the notion to me that Jeremy Roach is not the guy. Like I don't think that he can be what they need him to be. He had there were 4 threes that he took that were, 1, way too quick, 2, not even close, right? The one that he took down here when they were up, right? That missed off to the left side. Like, what is that shot? What are you looking for there? He had Grady Dick on him. If you notice in the second half,
He settled for that one.
Shire did
For that one.
for the first 5 minutes when Duke got hot, when they made the run, when Tyrese Proctor got it going, was Shire, the offense is right in front of the bench. And Shire is sitting there saying, I need this guy on, or I need you to run offense at this guy. I need you to go at Grady Dick. I need to find a way to get him involved in the ball screen action. And it worked. And that's how they got going in the second half. Jeremy Roach has Grady Dick ISO'd at the top of the key. There's like 3 minutes left. It's a close game. And he settles for that 3. What are we doing? Where's that shot?
I'm almost the opposite of you, though. I felt as though he wore down in fatigue, and that was part of his judgment because I checked that box the first half because I felt like, okay, he has shown me you can argue the first half he was the best player on the floor.
For Duke,
I think for the game. For the game. Even for the game, because I think if it was not for him, it's a blowout.
Jalen Wilson doesn't exist.
No. I just said the first half. The first half. And I think he wore down because he had to create so much for those guys. And watching it, I just felt like it took a lot out of him. So in the second half, I think he settled. He got fatigued. But
he did have a couple moves in the first half. The one where he split the ball screen and got to the rim and had the reverse layup. Like, that was...
He also took 17 shots,
That's
6
a
for
lot.
17. What concerned me about Duke was 8 assists off 24 made buckets. That's not
which
nearly,
hasn't been the norm.
Yes.
Hadn't been the norm.
That's something that needs to be addressed.
I think it's hard to evaluate this team in the lens of tonight because they're missing Tariq Whitehead. Like, what are we doing? This team, their ceiling in March is going to be so different than what we saw tonight as soon as he's back on the floor, right?
But people want to say that, but again, I don't know if he's the creator either. Like, they need, Proctor is that guy, and he showed you flashes that they can put the ball in his hand. I mean, Dariq's another player, and he's going to provide versatility, but I don't know if he's another creator for others.
Does his presence allow Roach to maybe be more of that creator, though, and then he can fulfill the scoring burden?
That's what it is. It takes
He
some
does.
of the defensive focus off of Jeremy Roach. Because
Right.
right now, outside of him, who are they going to go
Right.
get you a bucket when you need a
Right.
shot? Right?
And that's what we saw.
If you have Tyrese Proctor be the guy that defenses have to pay attention to, or if you're trying to hide Grady Dick on him and you can't do that, that changes what you could be offensively.
Yeah.
But can we talk about Kansas? Can we talk about the way that they played down the stretch? Can we talk about
Can we talk about Grady Dick?
Can we talk about Grady Dick? The
Yeah,
7
he was
straight
good.
points that he had?
He did.
I mean, look, that to me right there, that was the difference between these two teams. Like, that was kind of an ugly rock fight, especially the last, 8 to 10 minutes of that game.
Right.
But when it changed was because Grady Dick had the 7 straight points. It was the 3, it was the lob, and it was that layup. I don't know how he got that thing
Got
off.
it to the basket.
Because he took off 10 10 feet from the basket.
I got to tell you
and
the
found a
best
way to
part.
finish there.
Jeff Goodman tweeted like right before that happened that he was doing nothing, that he was a non-factor. What the heck? And then all of a sudden, Grady Dick went off and essentially won the game for Kansas.
I didn't even know he was out there. I was looking like, where is he? Where is he? And I looked up
Pulled
and
him.
he snatched him. Yeah, he didn't take a shot. Yeah.
No, but see, I was sitting next to Goodman, and like he tweeted, I think the exact tweet was, Kansas needs to find a way to get Grady Dick going if they're going to win. And he scored 7 straight points.
There you
now,
go.
all we're going to have to hear about is like, I
I
told
told
you.
you. There he is now. On cue. On cue, he walks up
Listen,
now.
speaking of great Goodman tweets tonight, we're going to talk about the Michigan State game later. But right before Tom Izzo drew up 2, not 1, 2 of the most beautiful game-winning sets that I've seen in a very long time, we had Goodman refer back to the ugly set that Tom Izzo drew up on the aircraft carrier. So he was 2 for 2 tonight in late game with Grady Dick and with Tom Izzo criticisms. But while we're on Kansas here, though, you mentioned how many shots Jeremy Roach took tonight. Can we talk about how many shots Jalen Wilson took?
26.
I mean, oh my goodness.
For both teams, because listen, they're switching everything. So at the end of the day, when you're playing against a team that switches everything, you got to put the ball in a player's hand, and he got to go make a play.
Explain why. Explain why that.
Because they're going to switch all your sets and everything. So you're coming out of this, those teams were switching everything. So now there's no pin down, there's no play you're going to execute. You got to put the ball in somebody's hands that can make a play for themselves or someone else. And that's why you saw both games.
Switching, when you switch it, it doesn't let you run the offense.
You can't run the sets. You're not going to run sets.
You're daring the other team to beat you one-on-one if they have you in what you would perceive as a mismatch, right? And basically all of these, it worked.
It did.
There's nobody that can go out and get their own.
You saw the 2 best players on the floor just put their teams on their back. They didn't play great, didn't shoot it great. But again, it wasn't that type of game. It was a rock fight. Kansas just showed their pedigree at the
You
end.
want another hot take? I got another hot take for you.
Always.
Jalen Wilson finished with 25, 11, and 5 assists, right? And we're kind of sitting here like, I don't know if he played that well. If he goes 2 for 7 or 3 for 7 from 3, and we're talking about him having a 30 ball and Kansas winning by double digits, like then all of a sudden we're all sitting here like he's National Player of the Year. Like, is this the best dude in the country?
Well, yeah. If Jalen Wilson takes a 15% jump
No, I
from
know.
3-point shooting, he is that good.
You
He's
know
a
what they say
first-team
about
All-American.
uncles and aunts.
Right.
If my uncle had a Grady, he'd be my aunt, whatever it is.
Right. So
I butchered that, but it's one of
we understood what you're going for. Last thing for me on this game, because I think you actually tweeted this out at one point. One of the adjustments that it seemed like Shire did in the second half was force Kansas offensively to try to finish over the towers they have down low, and then really forced Kansas's centers to beat anything. And it seemed that Kansas didn't really have much of an answer there. Do you worry about that going forward?
Yeah, I do. It's a concern because my vision of this game, the way I thought it was going to play out, is that you could attack the 4 spot, right? That was going to be the mismatch that Kansas won. They got 25, 11, and 5 out of Jalen Wilson, and they still needed, like, let's call it what it is, kind of a lucky run at the end to be able to win this game, right? I thought that Duke won that 4 spot matchup. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
I think Kyle Filipowski was as good as he needed to be.
Better than Wilson?
No, I'm saying that when they won that matchup, the front court in total, because they didn't have to guard the 5. So you might have all of these guys in these mixed matches, and Jalen Wilson able to get by his guy and get to the rim, and you know what's waiting there? 7-foot redwood, right?
What's most concerning about that is the fact that no one can make a shot from the outside as well. So you're driving in, you're getting paint touches, but then you're going 15% from beyond the arc. That's concerning. You got to be able to have somebody who's going to knock it down a shot. Now, Grady Dick has proven that he can be that player to knock down shots consistently. We didn't see that necessarily as much tonight, though.
That'll be the concern, though, going forward against Duke is the length is protecting the paint. But if you're playing against a better team that spaces you out, we were talking about that, Megan, watching the game. No one shot the 3 ball today. Well, I mean, Duke finished up 3 for 21 and Kansas with 3 for 19. So if you got to punish that lineup being able to stretch the floor. If not, their length is going to bother you and shut the paint down. And Kansas struggled. But again, they found a way to pull it out. I mean, both teams played hard defensively. I don't think there's anything to be concerned about if I'm watching either team after the night. And I don't know if there's anything we learned about either team.
I still think there are plenty of concerns.
But things that we didn't, they
But
weren't answered. It's the same. It's going to be the same, really.
It's the same thought that we had. Like I don't know how much we actually learned.
Right.
Beyond the fact, like, you know what? I don't
The
know.
concerns are there, or what you thought you knew about them is the same. We worried about Duke. Like, hey, who else going to create offense without Jeremy Roach? You're going to leave this game thinking the same thing. You're thinking about Kansas. We thought Wilson would take a step, put himself in that National Player of the Year conversation. He did. We knew Grady Dick was explosive. Outside of that, what do we get? You know, we knew DeJuan Harris was a good point guard. He had, 10 assists, 1 turnover?
Yeah, he hit the over 4.5. That was nice.
He did.
I needed that one. I needed that one after the first game, RC. I needed that one after the first game. Look, I want to ask you this, Megan. When you don't have a 5 that can shoot, like how do you solve that problem? Is that just something that you're going to have to deal with? Because you're getting nothing offensively out of it. You can't get the duckings that they normally get, right? You can't get the lob wasn't working there because there was too much clutter in the lane.
To me, then
you
have to be a good passer. If you're going to be a big that's not going to be able to score or do anything, you got to make yourself relevant out there on the floor. So at least that's being a good defender, or at least you can be relevant by being a good passer, trying to draw people away from the basket to open up and have people move around you more. Unfortunately, you got to, in my opinion, be able to at least be somewhat of a threat from 15 feet if you're going to be a big man. But we're not necessarily seeing that quite yet from either of these teams. That's going to be something to address moving forward.
All right. It wouldn't be the Field of 68 After Dark if we don't do some sort of superlative looking forward for the season and draw some conclusions from a game this early in the season. So we're going to do that. We're going to go around the horn quickly. Gun to your head, RC, and then we'll go to Rob and then to Megan. Do either of these teams make the Final Four? Yes or no?
It's too early to tell, but there's enough talent that I can see that.
Okay.
I'm not discouraged at anything that happened tonight where I'm like, man, I think both teams will get better. And it was a highly competitive game. It wasn't a well-played game, but both teams competed. So, yeah, I think you can get a Final Four team out of this.
Yeah, I thought the defense shone through for both the teams
Yes.
for me. And that gives me reason to be bullish on both of them.
Right.
And how about Filipowski?
Played well tonight.
Did you guys expect that from him?
No.
I know he had a double-double the first 2 games, but, like, I thought he was a lot better than what I was maybe expecting in my head. Maybe that's just because his last name is Filipowski, right? Maybe is that what it is?
You know the serious question is when Derek Whitehead comes back. Lively may come from the bench the rest of the year. Like, how do you sit him down? Because he is rebounding, and more importantly, he was defending on the perimeter, things that we questioned that he could do. He did that. And I think Mark Mitchell's motor and his versatility is you're going to want him out there. And where you can't sit him down because offensively you need his offensive ability because Mitchell isn't an offensive guy, Lively isn't really an offensive guy. He gives you a versatility of playing outside and stretching, and you can space him. So I think it's going to be tough to take him out of the lineup because he is defending and he's rebounding.
I mean, if he keeps putting up double-doubles, you can't bench a guy that's putting up double-doubles.
Well, I like Lively coming off the bench too, providing a spark defensively. At least coming in, he's going to be able to do something, alter a shot at the basket or whatever that might be. And I do think that scoring component is there. We just haven't seen it yet. It's early.
Yeah.
If he had other players around him, his presence would be needed. I think the biggest difference in the two is that this team will need more offense. Mm-hmm. They're going to defend collectively, and Lively's going to anchor their defense. But this team is going to need someone, and we saw that tonight, to pick up the scoring. Because if he doesn't score tonight,
Is it Proctor?
I think they need Proctor to initiate and help the other score. He has to get going. I think it has to be him. I don't think there's anyone else on this roster right now that can do it until he gets going.
Yeah, getting Proctor going.
Getting Proctor going.
Getting Whitehead back and having another guy that I don't know if he's a 16-point-per-game guy as much as he is like a 12.
All he needs to be is a double-digit guy.
Yeah.
We've seen their defense ability
Yeah.
and their length because Filipowski's versatility gives you an ability to say, hey, because even when they went big with Mitchell, they just cut Mitchell to the basket and they spaced you with Filipowski. Now you got Proctor, you got perimeter shooting out there where with his size, and even Ryan Young throwing it inside. They went to him inside. So I thought all their guys gave you moments. They just got to collectively be together and probably get a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, I would say, tell me if I'm wrong here, I think that right now Kansas is probably the better
I agree. I
basketball team.
100% agree. I was going to say
think
that.
That Duke is most likely probably going to end up not being as good as Kansas, but their ceiling is probably higher
Yeah,
than Kansas.
100%. I think when you look individually at the players on Duke, there's just so much untapped potential at the moment in time that we're just going to see these players freaking skyrocket over the course of the season. Again, you have to really adjust to the style of play and the level of play coming into this game. And you're going against a Kansas team that's just won a national championship. So that up and down, just getting used to that style, to the pace, to the physicality of it as well. This Duke team, to me, has a higher ceiling, but the Kansas team was a better team today.
Let me ask you this. One more question. I know you're trying to move on.
You're fine.
John Shire, what did you guys think of him tonight?
I thought he managed the game well. I really did. I thought there were times you tweeted about the timeout where he started screaming at the official. and
so funny.
Kay got away with that at times, but I think this was a good learning experience for Shire more so than anything. Just trying to figure out what matchups work. How can you adjust on the fly in the middle of the game? I thought he was solid tonight.
Imagine being an official, and like at one point you have, like last year for Duke, you had Coach K yelling at you. And now you have John Shire, who looks like he's 19 years old, coming up at you, right? That's got to be like when the substitute teacher tries to give you detention.
Tonight was the first time I felt bad for Duke from a whistle standpoint. like, are you kidding me? I felt like I'm defending them again. Like I'm sitting there, they got me defending Duke again. Can you believe that?
Duke got hit with 6 charges in the first half.
It was
Duke,
unreal.
6 charges.
I was wondering.
Hey,
one
man,
of them, the last one, I was like,
it's a new day in Durham.
It's a new era,
New
clearly.
time.
Yeah, I liked Shire's adjustments in the second half would be my answer. And I would have loved to see, I don't think much changes in the game itself, but I would have loved to see just the spectacle of Bill Self being on the opposite sideline for John Shire, just to put a little added pressure to the moment of it. You're nodding your head like, come on, that wouldn't have made a difference, right, RC?
I think he is who he is, and I think he's comfortable with that. And these young guys need confidence. He knows that. I don't expect anything to be different than going forward. What I saw consistently with them is they identify matchups, who they want to attack, and that's what they're going to do. That's something he's in that Duke that's been consistent in the Duke system for going back to Coach K. If we would always, and it would be my scout, and I would tell guys, if you hear if that number isn't on this play sheet, and you hear your number, that means they're ISOing you. So if you come out there and your number's 22 and they call it 22 and you looked at the bench, that means you're getting ISO'd. And you saw them pick their matchups tonight.
Yeah, and that's something I think a lot of the best coaches in college basketball and the best tournament coaches in college basketball. I mean, we talked about this before, right? Matchups win fights, styles win fights. And being able to identify where you have the advantage. You know who's the best at that in college basketball? It's Eric Musselman. He is so good at being able to find one matchup that he can exploit and take advantage of and go to it over and over and over.
It's an NBA style. It's an NBA thing. The NBA is, you put a guy out there that can't guard, they're gonna sit there and attack that guy every time, force you to make an adjustment, time out, get him out, or whatever the case may be. And that's, you're talking about a program that's built pros. You're talking about a program that's producing pros now, and Duke always has, and they're going to attack your weak link. At least if it's not the score, it's going to break you down and get a shot.
And to switch games for a moment, you and I were talking about this with Joey Hauser in Michigan State. Yep. They ran the same play for him 3 separate times, back to back to back, and he scored on it. And they were like, why aren't you keep running that?
Yeah. We were sitting there talking during the game late, and just like, go back to that. Particularly before Oscar's fouled out. I know we hadn't gotten to that yet, but we were like, go back. They're not going to switch. And with his size on that pin down, he's going to get a good look every time. And
well, let's go to that game.
Yeah, that's a great segue. Let's jump right in. We've made the people wait long enough for the actual marquee game of the night. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. Listen, Michigan State, I've said a lot of words, a lot of critiques about Tom Izzo and the state of this Michigan State program, and anyone who's still awake in the state of Michigan watching this right now knows that I am eating my words tonight. Tom Izzo, that was a masterclass. And for a guy who I've criticized for a lot of big picture things, the way he's handled the transfer portal, the way he's handled his roster, for him to essentially stick to his guns and say, I know what I've got with this team, and then be right about it against the 2 opponents they've opened the season with. Let's not forget the schedule that he put together this season. I mean, this is a gauntlet. I was wildly impressed. And it seems like it could be a different guy every single night for this team. Is that what you're picking up on?
100%. It could be a different person every single night. Listen, Sissoko, we got to give him the credit that he deserves. I mean, my goodness, he had that steal on Sheway in overtime. And it was, the timing on it was perfect. He was so aggressive getting to it. I was wildly impressed by his performance on really both sides of the floor, but he's playing with so much confidence right now. And that's something I think is really refreshing for this Michigan State team. But you had multiple players step up that I think could night in and night out be double-figure scores, which we were talking about earlier. Who's the guy on Michigan State? We were like, we don't know who the guy is, and that could be a good thing because who's going to step on any given night? We don't know. And you had, 4 players scoring double figures for Michigan State tonight? It says something.
Look, they proved me wrong. I'll tell you that. I didn't see that coming for them. I don't know if you guys saw. I did not see that kind of performance coming for them.
I know somebody that bet on tonight. I just know somebody bet on tonight. I know somebody bet on tonight. No, again, it's just a culture thing. This is just a Tom is. I mean, this is an Izzo team. I mean, the only question mark that I had about this team and what I continue to have, and Megan, we talked about this, was they got to take care of the basketball from their lead guard spots. And Hogarth tonight,
Oh,
I mean, they're going to be in the
drove me crazy. I looked over at you and said, AJ Hogarth is driving me nuts. What's he doing?
I'm a fan of this team, and of his. And I love the ability that you can have with both of those guards playing. And that's why they're going to control tempo. I don't care who they playing because of those two guards. But he has got to take care of the basketball. We talked about this in the pre. He had 5 turnovers tonight and nearly had another one. He got lucky with a 6th one he should have had in the second overtime. And that concerns me. Again, those two guards had a total of, I think, 8 turnovers tonight, 9 turnovers.
Yeah.
And that, when you're going to be in these one-possession games, these overtime games, if he can just get it down to 2, they can just have 4 total, then they're a tough team to beat.
And I know he had 9 assists tonight, which is fantastic, but so many times on ball reversals, he was hesitating.
Yeah.
And it slowed the offense down completely, and it forced them into making mistakes. So for me, I just want him to be a little more confident throughout the entirety of the game. You can't slow down and hesitate on those types of situations.
Yeah, and that's an issue that's plagued him his entire career at Michigan State to this point. But he strikes me as a guy, the more I watch him, he can make the hardest plays look so easy, but then he can make the easiest plays look so hard sometimes. And that's the just frustrating thing because you know there's so much potential there. I think when people ask the question, when people like us say who is Michigan State's best player, Michigan State fans, and I think even players and coaches want the answer to be A.J. Hogarth. But even at the end of games right now, he's finding himself on the bench, both in the Gonzaga game and the Kentucky game.
I think you need to have him on the bench at the end because I think there's too much inconsistency there. But you are 100% right. He had two assists out of pick and rolls in the first half, where he was coming off one-handed like bullet passes to the other side of the court, following shooters in the opposite court. I was like, make that face, right?
That was it was elite. He had a segment where it was elite point guard play.
Yes.
Where you're like, if I had to draw up and say what I want my point guard to do, he was coming off. I mean, just being patient. They play good D, get the handoff, turn the corner, get in the paint, finding the shooters in the corner, getting good open shots, and he has to continue to do that. The problem is his turnovers. They're just bad. They're just careless. They're unforced. It's not like he's getting trapped and they get a deflection. He's having really bad turnovers, and they're correctable. That's the scary thing about it, is that they're correctable. If he fixed those, he had 3 or 4 of his 5 turnovers a day that were just like, come on, AJ, you're better than that. If he does that, this team's dangerous. They can play with anybody because those 2 guards are going to control pace.
And here's the other thing I love about them is they very much understand. A lot of those other guys understand what their job is, right?
Right.
Like Matty Sissoko knows his role.
I think they all do.
And he's really good at his role. Joey Hauser knows his role. And I know that there are some people that are sitting up here right now that have their doubts about how good that he is as a basketball player.
Stop.
But, like, that dude makes shots.
Yeah, he does.
And if
He
all
does
you're
tonight.
doing is running them off of screens and making defenses adjust when you run them off of those screens, he could do that.
I
Joey
think they all
Hauser
do.
also has perfect form, by the way. You can tell
shot
that
looks
he's worked
good.
with a
Every time it
trainer
goes.
growing up because it is textbook when he's coming off of the screen, the way he catches, gets into rhythm, pulls his shoulder around, he's perfectly squared up every time. It's a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
And it finally was consistently going in tonight, and it went in at inopportune times for Kentucky.
Yeah, I thought he did more shooting off the move tonight than I've ever seen from him, which I don't know if that's something he's added recently, but it's not something I remember seeing, at least at the volume that we saw tonight.
At
So,
multiple levels, yeah.
yeah, right.
Real quick before we go to Kentucky, Matty Sissoko. Madi Sissoko. Where does he rank for you guys for like most improved players right now? Because I don't know if there are 10 players in college basketball that I've seen where I can sit here and say he made a bigger leap than what Madi Sissoko has made in the offseason. Because like that dude, he had a couple of hammer dunks down there. Those 2 lobs that he caught in the second overtime. I mean, come on, man. How many guys are getting up there and catching that?
But again, I think that goes back to the guard play.
No, it
I
does.
think that guard
It does.
play, and he's finishing.
It does,
Again,
but that threat, having that threat where you have the guy rolling to the rim, and you know if you just throw it up there, he's going to go get it wherever you put it. You put it by the square, he can go get it. Like that threat is big time. And he played the last 10 minutes of regulation and both overtimes with 4 fouls and guarding the National Player of the Year, who he then fouled out of the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Give the guy his flowers.
No, you're right. I think, to me, You're right in the fact that he is so improved, partially because of where he was last year, though. It's hard to talk about that without just being honest. I mean, he was the third center in that rotation, and you couldn't trust him to be on the floor for 4 minutes, let alone 20. But I think what we're seeing across the board for Michigan State, which is really fascinating to me with what Tom Izzo's sort of handicapped himself with this roster, is that guys last year that were in 20-minute splits at every single position are now looking so improved and more comfortable just because I think there's some added trust that they can make a mistake and not come off the floor. And I think that applies to Mady Sissoko. I also think it applies to Malik Hall and Joey Hauser in the front court, who led them in scoring tonight, and guys who have been wildly inconsistent through the course of their careers because any given night they'd only play 15, 20 minutes because they were competing with each other. And now it's like this opportunity is there that we haven't seen before. And you talk about development in that program and not giving up on guys. I mean, that's what Tom Izzo spoke about in the postgame, and it's special to see.
We didn't even talk about Malik Hall yet and how great he was tonight. Finished with, I just had it up right here, 20 points.
20.
But he had this massive, first off, that out-of-bounds play, he read the defense, noticed that Oscar Schube had his head turned the wrong way, just made a hard cut to the basket. That's an IQ play right there. That has nothing to do with, I mean, talent,
How about the ball
obviously.
flake to finish to send it into the second overtime?
Come on, let's go. So I think that he made massive plays that took guts down the stretch, which is huge for you to have that type of playmaker, for lack of a better word, step up on this team in this stage.
I want to talk about that for a second. You got a point?
No, I was just going to add, I also think something to watch out for this group is they can go small ball, and then you got a problem. Because if you don't have an Oscar Tshiebwe on your team, and then they can go with Malik Hall at the 5 and then Hauser at the 4, and then that goes those 3 guards, good luck guarding them. Because at that point, they're controlling pace. They're going to defend. They're going to switch everything. If you can't punish them inside on that, or you got a big that's not as just formidable as Oscar Tshiebwe, you got your hands full. That's a matchup you don't want with Michigan State.
So I think one of my biggest takeaways, you mentioned the 2 plays at the end, was I thought the coaching matchup here was a complete mismatch, and that was something that we saw the last 15 minutes of the game. Last 5 minutes of regulation and both the overtimes, I thought the quality of shot that Michigan State was getting was so significantly better than what Kentucky was getting. Like it was like you watch Kentucky running offense, you're like, what are they doing? What are they trying to do? Who are they trying to get a shot to? Whereas on the other end, you got Michigan State running stuff where you're getting lobs for dunks, you're getting open looks. You have the 2 plays at the end of the game. Like that play that they ran, I've never seen anything like that, where you throw the other guy out of bounds, you run the pick play.
That's pretty
Tyson Walker getting run at full speed. You got Malik Hall over there. By the way, like I know people are going to give Tom Izzo all the credit for that. The pass fake, drive in and go dunk it. You think that was coached, or you think that was just?
That's what I said. We just talked about Malik Hall IQ. It was just a veteran, poised guy making a play. But I think that's the issue that Kentucky's going to have is when you put that lineup out there. They tried. Shavir Wheeler played well tonight. He hit big time shots. But when you put him out there with Oscar Tshiebwe, you can see Michigan State scouting him, saying early in the game he kept getting to his left hand and getting in the paint, finishing at the rim, and it's like back up. As the game went on, the staff started saying. I even said this to, sitting next to Megan. When he hit the big 3, you probably thought I was crazy, but I was like, I go under and give it to him. If he makes the 3, then you pat him on his butt and say, hey, man, great job. You're going to lose the game. But he's so dangerous with the pressure he put on your rim. So they were just saying back up. So now he's backing up, sitting in the paint.
They kept sitting there every time that he had the ball. They would
back
say
up.
Sweep, sweep, sweep. And I don't know what that call is. I don't know what it is for them. But every time he had the ball and he brought it up, the bench was yelling, sweep, sweep, sweep.
It just means, you can tell, it means sit in the lane, sit in the paint, back up, and be an extra defender and clog up the lane. So now it started forcing Oscar Tshiebwe to catch it 10 feet, trying to back his man in, and now they could help and get back, and he's a late recover. So they got to figure out a way to fix that. I mean, the other guys weren't making shots as well. So he played well. I mean, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination. He didn't turn the basketball over. He took a step with that. He took care of the ball tonight.
The issue is not how good or how talented Shavir Wheeler is as a basketball player. The issue is his fit with Oscar Tshiebwe.
Right.
When you have a guy who does what Oscar Tshiebwe can do, you need a point guard that can do different things from what Shavir Wheeler can do, right?
I don't like making an NBA comparison because it's not. But people like you guys understanding basketball understand. It's like that's the problem with the Nets. If they're not really good defensively, but early on, it's still you're gonna have like Claxton out there and you're gonna have Ben Simmons out there. But if the other guys have the ball, there are 2 guys you don't have to guard.
Ben Simmons. He just calls
don't you start it. Don't you say that. I'm only comparing it because you got non-shooters at that spot at your big and at your center. It clogs in everything no matter who you got on the floor. And I think that's what happens to them. And then now when Oscar Tshiebwe fouls out, what's your identity going to be? What are you going to do? Who are you going to run the offense through? And they look bad tonight.
So other than Severe and Tshiebwe, who on that Kentucky roster do you trust to go get a shot and go get a bucket?
Not C.J. Frederick. He was a non-factor tonight.
I'd like to say Cason Wallace.
He had really good stretches tonight.
He looked like a freshman.
Yes, that stretches really like a freshman.
He just looked like the bunch of freshmen we just saw on Duke's roster. Talented freshmen, had their moments, and not as consistent as he will be, but he's going to have to be the guy.
Does this performance from Kentucky change what you guys think their ceiling can be?
No. I think it was also Oscar Tshiebwe's first game back, and yes, he had a double-double. He was a monster. In fact, I forgot how good he is.
4 blocks.
I mean, in your first game back, no, not at all. But again, it's so early in the season. It's so hard to say, yes, they lived up to my expectations. They did not live up to my expectations. I don't know. We haven't seen them play enough yet as a whole group. So ask me that in a month.
That's not how we do it here, Megan.
I know. You're asking for hot takes. I can't give you an educated take on that.
You got to make definitive statements, and then when they're proven wrong, you make another definitive statement.
I'm going to say, I said this.
I knew it all along and proved me wrong. I love it.
I said this to RC, though. The one definite statement I will make, Oscar Tshiebwe could be a freaking tight end for the Indianapolis Colts. Just the way his
She did say that.
is
She did
built.
say that.
My goodness
She
gracious.
did say that.
And Kentucky's going to play a lot of teams where they're going to be able to just get the ball inside, and Tshiebwe is going to just use his sheer physicality and talent to win games, not against a team like Michigan State who has that IQ, who has the coaching behind it. Yeah, Kentucky's going to win a lot of games this year, but I'm curious in those close games, especially when you get to SEC play where there's great coaches, how that's going to factor out.
I would be worried about Kentucky if only because I'm not sure how many games you can win if Oscar Tshiebwe is your go-to guy. I don't
National Player of the Year?
Yes, and I don't think that he
offensively.
How is he creating offense for you? You know what I mean? If you're throwing the ball to him on the block 8 feet away, are you confident that you're going to get a good shot?
Well, he had a terrible shot in that fadeaway down there, and he apologized to his teammates. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think what makes him so special is that he's the best rebounder I've ever seen. At being able to get the ball to himself, being able to get to the place where the ball is going, rebounding with 2 hands, getting it in his hands and not losing the grip.
Dennis Rodman-esque, yeah.
He's insane, his ability to get on the offensive glass. He's the best offensive rebounding team in the country, and he's one guy, right? But if their offense is, okay, we're going to try to find a way to get Oscar a post up 8 feet away from the basket, that's not – there's a reason why the NBA doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That's not an efficient way to score, and he's not, frankly, as talented on the block as, Hunter Dickinson is, or Trace Jackson Davis, or some of these other big guys.
Yeah.
So to me, that's kind of a red flag, is that I don't know if you need a basket. We saw 20 possessions when Kentucky needed a basket down the stretch. Who were they going to? Who did you feel confident about them going to? If you watch Cal run a whole bunch of different sets, well, not really, he ran 3 different sets down the stretch, but were any of those shots that they got or sets that they ran where you were like, oh, that was good, that was creative, that was something I liked? They had one. It was when they ran that 2-man game with C.J. Frederick and Lance Ware. And if your offense, the creative stuff you're running, all due respect to C.J. Frederick,
that's your
boy.
boy.
To Lance Ware, if the creative stuff you're running is 2-man game between those 2 guys, when you have all those other dudes out there, you gotta have something new. And I feel like that is a complaint that you hear over and over again from Kentucky fans when it comes to Coach Cal. Is there's no creativity, there's no newness. How many times are we going to see him run out lineups with Damian Collins and Oscar Tshiebwe together with Severe Wheeler at the point and expect something different to happen? How many times have we seen that? We know the end of that story. You lose to a Michigan State team that doesn't have one guy that's going to play beyond the second tier in Greece.
Okay.
Next level. Okay. I'm making a point. Okay. I'm making a point. I'm just, you know what I'm saying?
That's a flaming hot take.
That's a 2 a.m. take, Rob. It's still 1 in the morning here. There's still
it's still early, but again, your points are valid, but it's early. Again, I don't know how Severe Wheeler played well today, and he was their second best player. Someone else is going to have to step up. Is it Toppin? Is it Wallace? Who's going to be the other guy?
I think it's got to be Wallace. I think you need Wallace. He is a fantastic defender. He's a fantastic.
He had 8 steals tonight.
Yeah, I don't
8 steals tonight.
He seems like a nightmare to go up against. Man. That dude probably sucks to play against.
Yeah,
I think that's the best compliment you can give someone.
Yeah,
right. But he needs to be more on the offensive end. They need to get to the point where you can say, okay, we're playing Case and Wallace at the point. Severe Wheeler's coming off the bench and feel good about it. And I don't think you can feel good
I
about
thought
it.
Kaysen's best offense tonight was a lot of times when he was able to get a steal and then create
In
for himself
transition.
in
Yeah.
transition. That was his best offense. So how can he adjust to creating that type of offense within a half-court set, which he's going to have to do this season?
Yeah, I think they're just missing a bucket getter, and I think we all hope that can be Case and Wallace. But it's kind of like we were talking about with Duke earlier. Where's the Paolo, right? Where's the Tyrese Maxey with this group? Where is even like a Ty Washington? I don't know. I don't know who the guy in the backcourt is that's going to go out and get you 15, 20 when you need it on a night when you're in a rock fight. It's not Severe Wheeler. We know that. And I think it has to be Kaysen just by personnel
And
issues.
But
I hate that we're dogging Severe because he played really well.
I agree to say,
35 minutes.
I think if he's fine. He isn't the problem. He needs to play. If he plays the way he played tonight, I'm not worried about him in Kentucky in that aspect. It's got to be someone else.
Yeah.
Those two guys, I'm not worried about Severe Wheeler. He took care of the basketball. I mean, he got his teammates involved. He was very select. He didn't force anything. I thought he was really good. He's shown growth. I hope he continues to play that way. Oscar Tshiebwe, we talked about that. It's who else is going to show up on his roster? Who else is going to be consistent? Everybody else kind of had, but they need a third guy to be consistent,
What
and
did
then we'll see
Severe
what
shoot
happens.
from three tonight? Was it
Might have been 2 for 4, 2 for 5, maybe.
I think it was 2
He
for
hit
4,
two
and
of
then he
them.
had
Yeah.
one at the end.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know if we want to count that because he threw that thing over the top of the backboard. Like, that was not.
But they weren't 4 shots.
And he hit
2
he
for
hit
6.
The one that he hit in the second half on the right wing, the far wing from where we're sitting right now, when it was a dribble handoff and someone went under the screen and he shot it and he made it. That's the one that he has to hit.
Yeah.
That's the one that he has to make because it changes the way that you can guard him in those ball screens and those DHOs. And if you got to go over the top and chase him around, and all of a sudden he gets to play 2-on-1 with Oscar diving to the rim, that changes what they can be offensively and how you guard him.
I just think you got to lower the screen, because the further the screen is in a ball screen with a guy like that, you're just going to go under. You lower it inside of 3. Like a guy like Oscar Tshiebwe can set it as low as he wants. You're not going to get there. So if you back off of him, if you set that screen low enough, he comes off with his speed. You can't do it. And if they twist it, you definitely are not getting back in front of it again. So that's a minor adjustment. Just set the screen lower, and then now he can get in the paint and force rotation. They'll be fine. They'll make adjustments. I think as they get on, you're going to see how teams are playing him. But if he plays the way he plays tonight, they just need another guy to knock down shots. They got looks. I mean, C.J. Frederick got to make shots. I mean, that's what you're here
he's
for.
going to make shots.
He
has
will.
the ability to.
He has history shows. They're going to make shots. They need the scoring. They need a 3-point shooter from a guy like that.
Reeves,
And
too.
they'll
They
have-
didn't get much from him.
Didn't much,
tonight,
and he's been a
but-
double-digit
yeah.
scorer from the bench. So I don't want to overreact to it. They played against a good team tonight. Yeah, let's give them credit. Tough team, and we'll see what adjustments they make going forward.
I will overreact. Reeves was terrible tonight. I couldn't stand watching him half the time.
Yeah,
I'm
he
glad when
does.
they got him on
He
the bench. I
was.
thought it was
He
the
did.
best
He
thing
struggled
Cal made all
tonight.
night.
Yeah.
Hot take.
Let him know,
struggled.
Megan. There you go.
He was
you
struggling
Now,
tonight.
yeah,
Fair.
now you're one of us, all right? You just got to rip
Great.
kids
Welcome to the dark side,
unnecessarily.
literally.
Yeah, there you go.
Last thing here on Kentucky, we talked about the pressure on Cal heading into this season, given the way their season ended last year. That only got louder after tonight, I assume. I just did a quick Twitter scroll, and you can see some Kentucky fans are unhappy. I mean, you're rolling your eyes, Megan. So am I a little bit.
Come on, what are we, 3 games into the season? Everyone just needs to relax.
But I do
Come
think
on.
I think that there are valid criticisms because the stuff that they haven't done well and the things that have cost them in recent tournaments, specifically his inability to kind of adjust to what modern basketball looks like right now, it was something that showed up tonight. And if you are a Kentucky fan and you're frustrated about that, I totally get it. That doesn't mean that you should have won. That's not saying that Michigan State is a bad team. That's not saying that this is anything like the loss to St. Peter's. But if you're watching this game and you're Kentucky and you're saying we got out-coached and we were out-executed down the stretch of that game, I think that is an entirely valid thing to say. And if you're frustrated about it, it's something that they've been railing about for like 5 years now. So,
I think, Megan, we can attest we set by the Kentucky fan base. I think they were throwing things at us at one point in
Literally,
time.
someone hit me
Stuff
in the
was
head
just
with
flying.
something.
Stuff was flying all over the place. They were just upset about everything, and so.
Everything.
Oh, Kentucky fans were mad.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah,
they
yeah,
were
yeah.
a little upset with Cal today. They were a little upset with Cal
I
today.
don't blame them.
They were. I mean,
As someone that was a fan of Kentucky for the night, shall we say, to win by 7, I was a little mad at Coach Kelton.
You know,
Can't relate.
down the stretch, though,
Can't.
I do think Michigan State having that close game with Gonzaga last week helped pay off in this game when it came to just understanding how to act, how to approach a close game situation for those players.
because Michigan State knows that's the type of pace. We talked about that. They wanted to play in the 60s, and had it not gone into overtime, it was a
It would've been the
60-point
60s.
game, and that's their pace. So they know they're going to control the pace. They know with their style of play, we got to execute down the stretch because we're going to be in these one-possession games. That's the only reason why I talk about their guard play so much. They got to be careful with the ball. But again, that's what Michigan State is and what they do. And Kentucky's going to be in moments like that, and they got to get better. They just don't have an identity right now of what they're going to – a pecking order if scenarios happen like tonight, where Oscar's out of the game and then Sheepway's out, and you're like, all right, what are we going to do now?
Yeah. So a common thread in a lot of our Field of 68 shows that we do, we open the shows with the toasts, with the cheers of the night. Let's end our show this evening going around the horn. Everybody give me a toast to something that you saw, someone you saw tonight that stood out to you in a positive way. RC, you want to go first? I'm putting you on the spot here.
You
my
put me
friend.
on the
I
spot,
apologize.
but you know what? I'm going to go with Kyle Filipowski. I think he played well. I think, as a freshman, of the freshmen of Duke, he was the better freshman tonight. Now, I think it'll rotate. I think they all had their moments, but again, he showed tonight because it was the first road game for them. I mean, the game not at Cameron. And I thought he played a double-double basketball all year, and I think so far this year, and I think today he stepped up and played well.
Izzo, simply put, down the stretch, last 10 minutes of this game in overtime, fantastic decision-making. Everybody executed, so Izzo's composure that he maintained is what I'm going to toast to. Also, the kid that kept throwing his shoe down over the
the
board here, and that hit us. There's a little kid that kept throwing his shoe down.
Threw his shoe out.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there throwing the shoe back up.
It was the whole thing.
I thought it was a game.
Yeah. No, the kid was probably playing.
Yeah, it was a game. I thought we were playing a game.
Yeah. My toast tonight is we're gonna go with Mady Sissoko. We're gonna go
Ooh.
with Mady Sissoko because I do think look, Joey Hauser playing well is important. Getting good guard play out of the guys that were dogged on the Unscripted podcast last season over and over again is a really important thing. But if you look in the Big Ten and you look around the country, the best players are all at the 5 spot. You have to have a really good big man to be able to deal with those big bodies. Mady Sissoko, first 2 games of the season. Drew Timme, Oscar Tshiebwe held their own. They're one possession away from having wins over 2 top 5 teams. And I think that Mady Sissoko is the one guy that you can look at and say, I did not expect that out of him.
Against 2 of the arguably the best bigs they're going to face all year. You don't have anybody even close to being like that in the Big Ten.
Was anybody else named preseason National Player of the Year? CBS Sports said it was Drew Timme. Everybody else said it was Oscar Tshiebwe. Mady Sissoko went up against him, and what does he have? 14 and 10 in those 2 games?
I do want to see him go against Hunter Dickinson. I just changed my mind. There's a couple players over there that he can battle against. That's going to be interesting down the stretch.
Yeah, sure will. You guys took the 2 that I was considering, so I'm going to go creative with this one. I'm going to give my toast to both Michigan State and Gonzaga because they shot better from 3 on an aircraft carrier than Kansas and Duke did tonight in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Ugly basketball, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Rob Doster, Megan McKeon, Randolph Childress, producer Dagan Hughes, Jeff Goodman, John Fanta, and everybody else that was involved in our shows, we thank you for watching the Field of 68 After Dark, and we will see you again later this